Hey friends, how are you? Welcome back to the Content Systems for Growth podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Dewey, and today we're diving into something that I know so many of us struggle with, and that's decision fatigue and content creation. You know that feeling when even the smallest decision about your content feels overwhelming, like picking an image or writing a title, creating that meta description, writing your podcast show notes. Well, all of those decisions can start to feel overwhelming. I know, right? In fact, the idea for this episode actually came to me while I was pouring a cup of coffee the other day. I realized I was already exhausted thinking about all the tiny decisions that I needed to get my latest blog post and podcast episode out the door. And it wasn't even 9 a.m. yet. So today we're going to talk about what decision fatigue is and how it actually impacts your content creation and how you can reduce it. Let's make content creation easier and more sustainable for you. How does that sound? Let's get into it, friends. I'm going to guess most all of you already know what decision fatigue is, but just in case you don't, let's define what it actually is or what I'm talking about. Decision fatigue is that deterioration in the quality of your choices after making too many decisions in a row. I did a little research on this, and social psychologist, I believe it was Roy Baumeister, I'll put it down in the show notes, coined the term to describe how your brain starts to actually struggle with decision making after a certain point in your day. And this is why by the end of the day, you might struggle to decide what's for dinner. I don't know about you, but oh my gosh, that is one of my biggest things. Or do you feel overwhelmed choosing between different Netflix shows? I don't know. I know that's something my husband struggles with for sure. For content creators and business owners, decision fatigue leads to poor content choices, rushing your titles, you have your images, or you have inconsistent messaging. Maybe you have decision avoidance, and that's just procrastinating or putting off that content because it feels too hard to actually create. Recording a podcast episode, it can feel so challenging sometimes. Total creative burnout, feeling stuck and uninspired because of the mental load is just too much. And if you didn't listen to last week's episode with Ange Barnard from the Intentional Online podcast, where she actually goes in and talks about how your energy directly affects your content creation, like how that comes across your energy. If you're low energy, you might as well just stop right there because that content is probably not going to be your best work. But anyways, let me get back to my notes. Does any of these options sound familiar to you? If they do, you're not alone. And the good news is there are ways to fix this. How decision fatigue is going to show up in your content. I want to break this down so you just don't have to make as many decisions for a single piece of content. Because my brain, I like to talk about systems. And that was exactly what I was thinking when I was pouring my coffee. I'm like, how can I make a system out of all of these decisions when I create my content so it's so much easier for me? I want you to think about how many decisions that you actually have to make for one single piece of content that you create. Like, what's the topic you're going to cover? The best keywords for SEO, the title that's going to be attractive to your audience and click worthy. You want to write that meta description. You have to have your show notes. You need to create images. You need to have all your social media captions. You need to create all your clips from your podcast to put on your social media to capture people to want to actually listen to it. I mean, like a new audience person, because you probably already have a large audience. But anyways, what's the best call to action? Those are all things that you need to do when you are creating or recording a podcast or a video. As I've mentioned, if you're creating a blog post, recording a video, or creating a podcast, that list doubles. There's so much content and decisions that you have to make around your content. And those sheer number of decisions can leave you stuck in that analysis paralysis, which is why it's so important to have a system in place to reduce that mental load. I want to talk about how you can set a system up for yourself. What I did is I broke it down into 7 ways to reduce your decision fatigue in your content creation. And the number one place, and this one is not going to only apply to your content, it can apply to all the other decisions that you have in your business. So it's to design or create a decision parking lot. It's not design, it's totally to create a decision parking lot. Not every decision has to be made immediately. And sometimes we forget that as a business owner. We're just like, oh my gosh, I have to make these decisions. Well, do you really need to make that decision right this second? Well, potentially you want to set yourself up with a decision parking lot. This can be just a card in Asana. It can be a note in your notes app on your phone. You can jot it down in your calendar, your planner, your notebook, wherever you want to capture those non-urgent decisions. And then you can batch this process later when your mind is fresh. This is one of the first things when I would take on a new OBM client we would do. We would set up a decision parking lot, and those decisions that were non-urgent, we would discuss them during either our weekly meeting, like it was a weekly team meeting, we would discuss them together, or if I had a one-on-one with the business owner, we would talk about those different decisions that needed to be made that the team had put in the decision parking lot. If you have a decision parking lot and your team members know that's where they can go to put those, you're going to also reduce the number of emails and questions that you have coming into you. So like Slack messages that might come if that's the way you communicate, or different emails that are coming in, or voicemails, or however you communicate with your actual team. That would be something that will help reduce it by creating a decision parking lot. Okay, but on to number 2 is just establishing your brand guidelines. And I'm going to guess you probably already have this, but if you just have a clear brand style guide with approved colors, font, and messaging that helps to eliminate those choices every single time, that can really help. And you can let Canva or even ChatGPT help create this for you. Number 3 is your content template. So create title formulas, like for example, 7 simple strategies to reduce your decision fatigue and content creation. Use like a preset meta description formula, set up your blog posts and your social media templates so that they're the same way, and then standardize your call to actions. One of the things that I love, I use Divi for my WordPress theme. And one of the things that I love about that is it allows me to set up different templates that are called global templates, so that if I change that one global template, it will change that across the board everywhere that one particular call to action is on my website. So it makes it super simple to have one template and then adjust it as it needs to be. If I were to change something, like if you had pricing on there and you want to change that, or a time or whatever, like if you changed your one-on-one description for your coaching and you wanted to adjust it, you could just update that one global template and it would update it across the board on your website. Super easy. But creating templates is just a way to make it easier. One other way that I use a template, my content VA goes in and adds in my blog post that goes along with my podcast episodes. And I have a template in Google Docs that's laid out like the template in my WordPress theme. So I just plug in the information, how I want it laid out or where it breaks up. So that helps her, one, to not have to make the decision about how I would want it laid out. We're figuring it out because sometimes I get a little wordy and I have a long section. It just helps her to know how I want the actual blog post laid out. Okay. Number 4 is curating your stock image library. So instead of hunting always for that perfect image, create a pre-approved collection of your stock photos that match your brand. I have that in Canva. I have template galleries with stock images that she can pull any of those images and use them in any of my social media. And then I also have a folder with just our images of me. And I don't care. She can take whatever ones she wants out of that to create those images. That way, she can make her own decisions herself, and I don't have to be part of it. And I completely trust her in the process. And she's not having to go search everywhere to look for things. She knows exactly where to go to find the stock images as well as images that I have of myself that are in the folder. Excuse my barking doggy. Number 5 is implementing your decision blocking. So similar to your time blocking, just set that dedicated time in your week to batch your content decisions, picking your blog post titles for the month, Deciding on your content calendar is essentially what you're doing. And when you're deciding on your content calendar, just pick the title that you want to go along with that particular piece of content and then approve any content topic. So if maybe you outsource, I do have clients that outsource their content subjects to me, and I'll give them a list of 20 to 30 different topics that they could talk about during that month. They can just go through and pick the 4 that resonate with them, or they can go through and pick the next with that many topics. They can go through and pick out a quarter's worth of topics. It's completely whatever they want to do. But that way, you just have all those topics ready to go. And this is a great way to have your decision parking lot, not your decision, your idea parking lot or your idea bank, library, whatever you want to call it, where you put all your ideas when you're going through to pick out your subject that you want to talk about for the next month. You can just go into that parking lot and look at that as well. Okay, and then choosing your images in bulk. So maybe you just want to have, I use Style Stock Society, I believe is what it is. I'll put a link to that down below as well for my stock images. And what I love about it is that they just will have, I think, 20 images that are all that same theme. And that way, everything is cohesive throughout that actual one piece of content with those images. Okay. Number 6 is to use A/B testing to reduce those future decisions. So if you're stressed about like your email subject lines or your blog titles, it doesn't hurt. Like I mentioned before, the 7 steps. Just try out different formulas, see what actually resonates and work, and just put those on a repeat. Maybe come up with 12 different types of titles that you like to use, or 12 similar subject lines, or some sort of format that you like to follow for your subject lines, and see over time what actually develops out of that. And then you'll have like a go-to structure, so you don't even have to think about it anymore. And number 7 is to automate and delegate where possible. So use scheduling tools for your content posting. I'm sure that most everybody out there already uses some sort of social media scheduling, but make sure you're using those scheduling tools so that you can set up your content when it works into your schedule, not when you actually want to go out and have to do it at this specific time. Or maybe you want to be able to just post and be out on your social media at the same time. So you want to block schedule that, but just have everything ready to go so that you're not having to make decisions. When you're doing it, you are out there, you have everything created, your captions created, your images created, your titles created, everything is created, and that's actually set up for you in your social media content calendar. So you don't have to make any decisions. You just go to that day, log into your platform, and then schedule everything right there at that time. And don't forget to put links to it so that you can easily jump to it when you need to. And then set up your workflow in Asana to streamline your approvals. In my Asana, I have it streamlined with my content VA. So as we go through the process, she just moves it down the stream. I'll move it to a bucket that will be for her work. She'll move it for my work. So we always know where we are in the actual process. And that helps with every decision that you need to make. And it then will free up that mental bandwidth so you can be a little more hands off with all that tasks and all that decision making. Okay, I want you to take a few actions away from today's episode. I want you to start a decision parking lot. It's simple. Just pick a place to start that decision parking lot. And as you have decisions come up in your day, don't just make those decisions right then. Like if it does not need to be an immediate decision, save it for another time when you are able just to batch your decisions. I want you to create one content template to help you streamline your process, and then time block one decision-making session this week or next week, whenever it works, because I don't know when you're listening to it. So if you're listening to it on Friday, make it next week. If you're listening to it on Monday, make a decision about when you're going to have a time blocking decision for that week. Okay, these small changes, friends, can make a huge difference in reducing decision fatigue and making content creation so much easier for you. Thank you, friends, so much for your time. If you love this episode, I would love for you to share it with another entrepreneur who can use a little decision-making relief for themselves in content creation. And of course, I would love, love, love if you left me a 5-star review to help this reach more business owners that are just like you. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, and I hope you make this a wonderful week.
Yay! Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found this episode valuable and learned some actionable tips that you can implement in your business so that you can feel accomplished and less stressed. If you enjoyed this show, please take a quick minute to share this with your business bestie, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps me reach more business owners just like you. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please reach out to me on my website. I've created a form just for you. Remember, with the right system and mindset, you can achieve the success your heart desires. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to chatting with you next time. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And don't forget, let's grow, friends.